Thank you very much to Bishop Mark and Father John for their warm welcome. I think that's probably the first time in my life, perhaps the last time I'll be allowed to look down on a bishop. But no, thank you very, very much for the warm welcome. I'm actually here because I am the chaplain or assistant to the group of lay Dominicans that you have in the diocese. And they asked me to come down and share something with them for the day, so I said that would be great, thinking I'll be sitting talking to 10 friends. And then Father John got involved, and then the bishop said he was coming as well. So it's fantastic to have the opportunity to share with a much larger group, and hopefully I'll be able to offer you something of help to you, and hopefully be able to learn from you, and that you can learn from each other, because we're all in the process of being evangelists ourselves. To be a Catholic is to receive a call to be an evangelist. We each do it according to our vocation and according to our personality, but there are common things and we can learn from each other as we undertake that work. But it's good to know that we're in a room of people that I think have sensed that call and are responding to that call. What is evangelisation? In a sentence, it's about introducing people to God, or if you like, God calling people to himself and sometimes using us in the process. Somebody recently, a friend of mine, compared it to arranging blind dates. Now that may seem an odd thing to do, it may seem trivial, but it's not as stupid as you think. It's like if you have a friend and you think it'd be good for your friend Sally to meet James, you have to kind of arrange for Sally and James to be in the same room together, and maybe tell Sally about James and drop a few hints that he's a nice person and this, that and the other. And then you introduce them, or maybe you sort of create a contrived situation where 10 of you go out on something together and you make them sit together. And you hope that they get on, and sometimes it works, and sometimes they end up married, and you've actually been a channel in creating a lifelong permanent loving relationship. And in a sense, that's what we do as evangelists. And there's a certain amount of insight in that, there's a certain amount of working out the psychology of the situation, there's a certain amount of judgment as to the goodness of the other person, and then there's a certain amount of just letting it happen. At the end of the day, they're responsible for what they do. It's a decision between the two of them as to whether to take up the offer. So being an evangelist in that sense is a bit like arranging a series of blind dates, but that's not to think that you have to become so black to be any good at it, because we each do it according to our personality and so forth. And I'm going to be talking about some aspects of that today. My understanding is that a lot of you have been looking at Sherry Waddell's intentional discipleship, and I'm going to take that as a kind of context that most of you have looked at that. Don't worry if you haven't. I think it's a good book. She's basically a lay Dominican. She works very closely with the Dominicans. It's, in my view, a good thing. But she's had vast experience of working with people, inviting people to Christ, seeing people enter the church. And she shares that both from the point of view of the process and the content. And that's what I'll be doing today. So what I'm going to do is this morning, it's going to be a bit sort of me talking, I'm afraid, is divide it into two halves. And the first half will be about the process of how someone, if you like, in the Sherry Waddell language, comes to intentional discipleship, or becomes a Christian, becomes a Catholic. That sort of, it's mainly about entering into the church. A parish priest in a busy city once, someone knocked at his door, and he came down, and they were a bit nervous, but they said to him, "Father, I want to become a lapsed Catholic, and I'm told that you're a Catholic priest, so you can probably help me." And he's not quite sure whether they're taking the mick or whether they're a journalist or something. And he says pardon, and they repeat the request. And he thinks there's something going on that he ought to take seriously. He says, "Well, why do you want to be a lapsed Catholic?" And they say, "Well, I live in this tower block, and my next door neighbour is a very peaceful person, a very charitable person. Of all the people I know, they spend more time than anyone else helping out their neighbours. They try not to tell me, but they work for the Samaritans. And whenever I've got a problem, they're just really understanding and really caring, and they have time for me and they come round. And I don't have religion, but I thought they ought to have their religion. So I asked them what they are, and she said, I'm a lapsed Catholic. So can you tell me how to be a lapsed Catholic? The story tells us a couple of things. It tells us that there are some really impressive people who don't come to church, as we all know. But it also raises the question of how we form people. The lapsed Catholic presumably had a bad formation somewhere along the way at some level, but had actually become, I would say, a person in the kingdom of God by the sounds of it. And it just raises the question of, someone comes to us, not so much asked to be a lapsed Catholic, but asked to be a Christian, what we do. For the most part, when we run RCIA, people have already, in my experience, decided that they're Christians. They've often been coming to Mass for ages, and they basically want to become a practicing Catholic, it's often espoused a Catholic. So they've done a lot of the journey themselves before they sign up for RCIA. And a lot of our RCIA courses then focus on introducing them to the sacraments, making sure they understand the Church's moral teaching, and so on. So it's for people who, if you like, aren't starting from zero. They're not starting from, I've never heard of Jesus, or I think he's just a bloke, and I've never been to church. They're already quite a long way along the road. And yet, the vast majority of people in this country are not that far along the road. The vast majority of these people only don't go to church, or they only go to church at Christmas and Easter and funerals and weddings. So, and the vast majority of people don't think Jesus is God. Some of them don't think he exists. Most people think he existed and was a good bloke. Some of them think he's a good bloke with a moral message that we should pay some attention to. That's pretty much as far as it goes. In the middle of that, most people believe there's some sort of higher power, spiritual power, and actually most people believe or want to believe that there's an afterlife. But that's pretty much it. So there's an awful lot of distance between that sort of starting point, and it varies for each person. And the person who says, I'm a believing Christian, I want to be a Catholic, I want to be able to receive your sacraments. And it's that kind of group of people that I think we need to find more ways of reaching. If you like, proactively going out and saying, come and see what we've got to offer. Because that's, I think, where the majority of people are in this country. It's great when other Christians become Catholics, and we should politely encourage that while respecting their Christian faith. But if you like, the biggest audience, or in marketing terms, the biggest market, is that huge chunk of largely secularised people. And for the most part, we're beginning to actually, as we'll see this morning, find resources and ways of reaching out beyond the Catholic community. I'd say in passing, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about lapsed Catholics, other than the initial comment, but lapsed Catholics, with the exception of the one I talked about, are in some respects one of the hardest groups to reach. We often heard it said, we're trying to reach Catholics, and the next obvious group is lapsed Catholics. But broadly speaking, lapsed Catholics are people who've had an experience of the Catholic Church and decided it's not for them. Sometimes because of a bad experience from a Catholic. So they're actually carrying quite negative baggage, either about the Christian Catholic message or about the experience of the Catholic Church. And they're actually quite a hard group to reach. But most people think, we'll reach the lapsed Catholics, and when we've dealt with them, we'll go on to the real challenge of the non-Catholics. But actually, do the non-Catholics, because they've got no agenda at all, and then you might go on to the hard case, the heart of the lapsed Catholics. It's just a different way of thinking about it. But my own experience, certainly when I was teaching in school, was, again, this was teenagers, was the worst ones, the hardest ones to reach were the kids who'd had some sort of faith and then rejected it. And the vast majority of kids I taught were either had no faith at all or had been baptised, and that was it. And they were incredibly open. And so there's a lot more openness out there than you think, and a lot more openness than you will realise if you only ever talk to people who've had a bad experience of the church. So that's, again, it's another reason to focus on these people. Initial evangelisation, initial proclamation, should be focused on the person of Christ. It's also a welcome to the church, and it's a welcome to mission. But it needs to keep this Christ-centred. Christ is our best resource. We're not going to split him from the church, and we're certainly not going to split him from mission, but it needs to be Christ-centred. The church is the body of Christ. It's where we meet Christ, but it's to meet Christ. It's not just to be a social club. It's not just to do funny rituals. The rituals are all about encountering Christ. And they should all orientate us to mission. It's not just about being in the church and doing nothing. It's about being in the church and being Christ for others. And you just need to keep that as your ethos that's going on all the time, so people see that's what's going on. Kids would say to me, I don't believe in God. If I asked them, have you believed in God? They would all, 80-90% would say they didn't, 13 months. If you ask them, so I stopped asking that question, so that meant they didn't want to do RE. If I said to them, what's your image of God? They all had an image of God. Well, usually it was about one person out of 13 who didn't. And I then say, well, and how do you feel about your image of God, and how do you relate to your image of God? We basically ended up talking about their prayer lives, despite the fact that they didn't think God existed. God said it. So there's lots of ways in to spirituality. They used to say that, again, the reason that Billy Graham rally works is that there were loads of people who were, because they'd been catechized, who were one good sermon away from conversion. And this is also why, the traditional Catholic mission, when priests would go around, the first week they'd go around and get all the people to come back, and then they'd sort of zap them with a couple of good sermons. They were like 3 or 4 good sermons away from conversion. Now most people are countless good sermons away from conversion. You've just got to start further back and just drip feed lots of little things. It's not going to happen overnight because people need more encouragement, which is, I think Cherry Bell talks about those initial thresholds of trust and curiosity. That's kind of what's going on. And you just drip feed them. You may not see the results of what you do, but if you've just planted a little seed, it may come to fruition 3 years later. You just don't know. It's part of a bigger team game, and you just keep going. I once had the privilege of giving a talk, and this woman coming up to me, and I did the sort of Nicky Gumbel thing where he says, he doesn't sort of force it on me. He says, I'm going to say a prayer of commitment, and if you want to say it, just say a silent amen, but come and tell someone afterwards because we'll be able to help you. And there was this girl that had been coming for 3 weeks, and every week she'd said, she wasn't from the parish, she was the only non-parishioner, and she wouldn't give me her contact details. She was very cautious. And I'd talk to her and say every week, so I might come back next week, I'll just see, so I'm fine. So I did this thing, and I said this prayer, and she was in my small group, and she was obviously more relaxed than she had been. And she came up to me at the end and said, can I have a word with you? I said, yeah. She said, you know, you said to say that, if you say that prayer, to come and tell you. Well, I did, but I'm not sure if it worked. I said, well, how do you feel? Or how do you feel now? She said, well, she said, I feel really peaceful, and as though my whole life has led up to this minute, and I'm definitely coming back next week. And I said, I think it worked. And believe that through what you're doing, whether you're the administrator, whether you're the person cooking food, whether you're giving the talk, whether you're asking questions in a discussion that you think are going nowhere, that God can do stuff. I mean, you don't want to be putting emotional pressure on, but you do actually want to believe that God can use you individually, or you collectively, or you as a group of 4 people from St. Boniface's, to bring people to Christ, to bring people to conversion, to move people forward in conversion. He will do it, and he does do it. He wants to do it. He'll do it in other ways. He'll do it through lapsed Catholics, as the story showed, but he wants to do it through each of you individually and collectively. And sometimes that means just taking a chance. Somebody in a parish I worked in became a Catholic. He'd been married to a Catholic for 20 years. His kids had been brought up Catholic. He'd been quite cooperative in the process. And I said, why did you become a Catholic now? And he said, somebody asked me to join an RCIA course. No one had asked him. That's all it took. It's incredible. In fact, the parish priest was new. He led on an RCIA course and got about 15 converts on the first course. Basically because they'd all been sitting there waiting for someone to ask them. Now that won't happen every time, but you know, it's God's waiting to do things through us. we probably think of conversion typically as St. Paul being converted on the road to Damascus. And we think that's what it should be. And you tend to get people giving talks where they say, I was a terrible sinner and I was addicted to this and I was running drugs and then God knocked me over. And that stuff happens and that is important. But most people's conversions are gradual. It's bit by bit, and often they don't know there's been a conversion. If you've been brought up in a good Catholic family where there's always been a life of grace, there may not have been a time when you weren't consciously committed to your faith. There may be some significant moments in it, and that's fine. That doesn't mean you're second best. Actually, arguably it means you're better than the person who leads a special conversion. And often we are the people who can help a person interpret the event. Someone said to me on a call, he did this, again it was one of these introductory things, and we talked about Jesus, we talked about the cross, we talked about faith, and he just kept saying, I'm an atheist, I don't believe. He was there because his wife wanted him to be there. Very respectful. I thought this guy's going to stop coming, because we're going to start talking about prayer. He's already nervous enough when we talk about Jesus. We talked about prayer, and he said, can I start? We've got to discussion. I said, yeah. He said, well, I go fishing to get away from things, and I just like sitting in the peace and the calm. And sometimes I just get this huge sense of peace and me being connected with something bigger than me, and blah, blah, blah. And he said, I've never shared it with anyone because I think it probably means I'm going mad. But now I'm thinking it might be prayer. And he kept coming. In fact, interestingly, he never at that time became a Catholic, but he took all the literature away and told other people to come. So you get to see funny things going on. The initial conversion, let me read out what St. John Paul II says about initial conversion. This is from his encyclical on mission, Redemptoris Missio. He says, the proclamation of the Word of God has Christian conversion as its aim, a complete and sincere adherence to Christ and his gospel through faith. Conversion is a gift of God, a work of the Blessed Trinity. He carries on a bit later. From the outset, conversion is expressed in faith which is total and radical, and which neither limits nor hinders God's gift. At the same time, it gives rise to a dynamic and lifelong process which demands a continual turning away from life according to the flesh to life according to the Spirit, like St. Paul. And then, which I think is almost the best bit, conversion means accepting by a personal decision the saving sovereignty of Christ and becoming his disciple. You know, that's what we're about, and that's very much what intentional discipleship is. I mean, I forget when she quotes that, but she's trying to get people to that conscious, lived commitment to Christ, where Christ is the centre of the person's life, not themselves. Like it's about a movement from being selfish to selfless, or from being self-centred to God-centred.